city wanted to create a tech center. And so they were, they were forward thinking. They said, we want to create a tech center. We want to create those kind of jobs in the economy. Excuse me. And so luckily they got some pretty good advice. They talked to a guy, like one of the older, you might say founders, or at least someone that's been around Silicon Valley for a long time. And they said, how do we attract big technology companies to St. George? And he said, you don't. Like, you won't ever. And, of course, that's kind of like, really?
You're like, but
we want to. And he says, Microsoft is in Seattle because Bill Gates lives in Seattle. Dell Computers in Texas because Michael Dell went to the, University of Austin. Anyway, he goes down the list and he's like, you look at Steve Jobs, everywhere. He's just like, they follow, they're where their founders are. Yeah. He says the best thing you can do is you find the most thriving technology companies in your region and help them thrive. Find out what you can do to help them thrive and help them grow. And the city took that advice. And so they approached myself. I'm the CEO of Busy at the time. Ryan Weedig, the CEO of Vasion, Clinton Reed, CEO of Zonos, and just kind of said, hey guys, what can we do to help you? And that was really forward thinking. That was awesome on their part. And so they said, well, we'd love to see you move up to the old airport and build your buildings there and buy some lots. And one of the curses of getting in the tech world is it makes you an innovative thinker, like you overthink everything. Yeah. And so we got together and we're like, well, is that really what we want? Would that really help us? Because they were saying, and so they got us thinking. They're like, well, what will help you? Yeah. What will help you thrive? And so whenever you do, I say it's my curse now, but it's a great curse. Like that's why Tech Ridge is unique, is because it's really innovative thinking. Yeah. So we got together and said, okay, well, how could the city help us? What are the things the city could do to solve our problems? And so we kind of zeroed in the focus and said, well, it's all about recruiting and retaining top talent. Right. Like for us, what's going to keep us in St. George? Because that's the city's goal. Like, how do we keep these technology companies that are emerging in St. George? Because a lot of times they'll leave. If a tech company is big enough, it's going to move to Lehigh for Silicon Slopes, moves, San Francisco, wherever they feel like they can thrive. And so we said, okay, well, what's our biggest challenge? And we all agreed, the biggest challenge is both retaining and recruiting top talent to the areas so that we can grow. Sometimes these companies are growing at 60, 70% year over year. How do you keep up with that? Yeah. So we said this environment needs to help us do that. Yeah. And so we kind of went down the road on an innovative project. I took the lead of that discussion because I had a background in construction and land development. And we really, brought in some professionals like out of state, like land planners and stuff, and said, okay, what can we do? And so we kind of took it as a research project, researched all the things that make a great experience, a great community that attracts people. Because at the end of the day, if you're trying to recruit and retain top talent, you're trying to create experience that makes people want to be there. Yeah. Like exciting, fun. Like today, I think I have the funnest job in the world. Like all I get to do is sit around and try to think of cool things to do to make people want to be at that project.
Yeah, to come and live here and play here, but then also have the ability to work there as well, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Live, play, and work, yeah.
Yeah, so they have a good experience.
Yeah. So why, as they're going through, they do an RFP, right? So a request for proposal. Yep. Are you one of multiple people? Are they talking to a couple of people? How did they kind of navigate through that? Was it kind of like, hey, we're going to do this one way or another. Let's just assemble a team and just go with it. Is that kind of how it was?
No, that's how I thought it was at first. Okay. Excuse me. So at first I felt...
So you learn subcontractors and contractors at one point. Now you're like, wait, business and government. Yes. How do those things crash into each other? Because there's a learning curve there.
That was a learning curve. Yeah. That was a learning experience. So what happens when the city said, okay, we want to do this, then we created the vision of Tech Ridge, spearheaded by me, but heavily influenced by, Ryan, Clint, others in the tech community. We created the vision of what Tech Ridge needed to be, and then we kind of handed it back to the city and said, okay, this is what we need to be. And we kind of thought it was going to be a partnership. And then they said, oh, okay, we got to put this out to RFP. And at first it felt like a betrayal. Yeah. But it was just because I didn't understand government. Like legally, they have to. They have to put it out to RFP. That's just what they must do. Mm-hmm. And so the two bidders that ended up bidding on it was ourselves. I put it together, a group that bid on it, and the Gardner Group, which is the second largest developer in the state of Utah. Yeah. And so probably the reason we won the bid is because the city, when they put together the criteria, they basically took our vision and made that the criteria, which was appropriate. Like you've got to be able to accomplish this, basically show us how you're going to bring in the technology companies, show us how you're going to create an environment that they can thrive in, so it was a lot of things that we really had the insight on. Mm-hmm. And so the Gardner Group, they're a great company. They just kind of said, here's our portfolio. Like we're awesome. Like you should pick us. Yeah. And I don't blame them.
Steve Ivory, the Ivory Homes, is he kind of like a big contributor in the Gardner Group, or is he not even a part of the Gardner Group?
I actually have no idea. I only know of the Gardner, like, I think Kem Gardner, his dad, and then I want to say Nathan is the son, but I'm not.
Okay.
I'm not certain.
I thought there was some connection with Ivory Homes and like the University of Utah and the research, but maybe I'm wrong. Anyway, that's a whole nother sidebar. Yeah. So they're a big, I mean, one of the biggest developers in the state, right?
Yep.
And so they came in.
Yep.
And do you think they were just behind the 8 ball? It's like they didn't have.
I don't think they focused on it heavily.
Okay.
You know, I mean, they have so much going on, and you know, it's no criticism to them. I just think they probably, I guess, respond at some level to any RFP. So I think they responded, but they didn't do like we did and address every single thing. Like we spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on just the proposal.
Yeah.
We brought in the best land planners from the nation, you know, people from Atlanta, Washington, D.C., Phoenix, Denver, Newport, California, like all the people that had created some of the best experiential mixed-use developments in the nation. So we brought in, and because that's the one thing I'm good at, it's like bringing in the right people, you know? And so we brought in the right people, focused on the points of the vision. Like, you know, we basically took it like a project, like, okay, let's think through this. How are we going to achieve this? How are we going to achieve this? And so we addressed every single item.
Yeah.
And the city manager at the time was Gary Esplin. You know, he'd been city manager for like 40 years, and he told the council, he said, "This is the single best proposal I've seen in my 40 years of history." But it's because we really dug in. Yeah. You know, and that
you got a bunch of people that could see where it was headed, the opportunity, and then, you know, there's a lot of clear direction. And and I felt that from the first time I ever heard you talk about it, as like, you could tell you're thinking about what is it going to look like when I walk down the sidewalk of this street and this street over here. You're like, right. I can see what that experience is going to look like. I could tell from that passion. So did you start with like, where did Dixie Tech come in this timeline? Because right now up there, Dixie Tech is up there. Busy was up there. The Inn on the Cliff, right? So Cliffside Restaurant, Inn on the Cliff. But that was basically it over the last basically 5 to 10 years.
Before we came, it was like Inn on the Cliffs first, and then Dixie Tech had just barely finished their building, and so they were before us too.
Okay.
So Dixie Tech like had made a deal with the city of St. George, and they bought their property and everything before we ever came to the table.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, which is interesting because it's a technical college, right? Yeah. So what was did that have some play in it? Was Dixie Tech along for the kind of the planning process? Did you have them in mind, or it was like, hey, they're going to operate, with this?
I mean, I'm not sure what played in their dealings with the city prior to us. I assume the city, when they wanted a tech center, they probably thought, oh yeah, that works, and so they probably put them there. But I don't know the details. You know, it was Kelly Stevens was the president of Dixie Tech at the time, and you know, I mean, good heck, what she achieved is amazing.
Yeah, I think it's awesome what they've done up there so far. I mean, there's still more to come, right? They're still just starting.
There is. Like they're doing amazing. So she created that foundation, and she really kind of broke the mold, which was helpful for us on the Class A level college that they built. You know, because you're trying to create these great experiences, and they really did a good job of setting that setting that tone, which was fantastic. And on the Cliffs, the owners there, they'd bought it like a few years prior from, I don't know, you remember what used to be Rococo's, and I don't even remember what the hotel was, but the restaurant was Rococo's. They bought it, renovated it, cleaned it up. It's really an awesome place now. I mean, everybody loves to go there.
Great hotel.
So both those preceded us. And then we got into the project, you know, won the RFP, and the first thing we did was start creating a home for Vasion. So Ryan Weedig, CEO of Vasion's a good friend of mine, and you know, anybody that knows Ryan knows how bold he is. And so he just was like when there was a whole bunch of us talking about like what we're going to do. There was many others besides the ones that are there. And at the end of the day, there was like a couple that really took action, you know, and myself, Ryan, Clint, it was just like, oh, we're going to do something.
Yeah.
And that's so important. Like it's critical that you get those first movers that just get things going.